Well, hello, Estelle, and you are here today. We're going to talk about the Digital Schoolhouse. Is that
That's
right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
But there's a couple. I want to just start off with something. So I don't know if you've seen. I've been collecting a few things on these shelves. I've got some video games from the 1980s. What else have I got? I've got a Angry Birds, some Minecraft stuff here, little DS console, and then one of these big heavy things. It doesn't Avalanche. Okay, it doesn't look so great on camera. So they're all things, artifacts connected with video games, and I thought it might be a good idea for you and I to just have a conversation about, is that something that we should be using in school? The theme of video games, is it a useful thing for teachers to refer to? Any feelings about that?
Yeah, definitely. Computer games are, even if you say to a group of students, do you play games? You'll get a few that say, oh yes, I play games, and they'll consider that they've got a console at home or they play on a PC. But when you delve a little bit deeper, actually nearly all of them play games because they play computer games on their mobile phones these days. And perhaps they don't actually think about those kind of games as being something that makes them a gamer. But actually those kind of just fun games just to fill a few minutes are as much about playing a game as playing on your actual console. So we are all really gamers to some degree nowadays.
Yeah. And we've all encountered play in one form or other, whether that's sort of, like a quiz. I'm going to ask you a question, see if you know the answer to this, or playground games or tabletop board games. And then, whereas I suppose somebody like me, the age I am, maybe there seemed to be a much clearer distinction. Many years ago, it was something you had to get out of the box, plug it into the TV, whereas now they're pervasive, aren't they? They're everywhere we look. So something, do you think that is useful then? If we're trying to teach some of the aspects of the computing curriculum, things like data representation and flow control, like iteration and sequence selection, do you think that that's a useful way to add context to what we're doing?
Definitely. It brings about a context that the students actually understand. Sometimes when you give context and it's perhaps about using a computer in a laboratory, it's not something that they really understand because they haven't got that hands-on experience of doing that thing. But it also gives a context that they can actually be creative with. So you can teach things like sequence and selection by having your students actually create a computer game. And it doesn't need to be a really complex computer game, because actually that's one of the hurdles that as myself as a teacher in the classroom, I have to overcome sometimes, that you say we're going to make a computer game and they think they're going to make the next FIFA, whereas reality is we're not going to have time to do that. That takes years and with a massive team. But if you teach them to create something little, something simple, like some of the early computer games like Pac-Man, they can actually create something, learn about sequence and selection and iteration, but create something that really gets their creative juices flowing and makes something that they can actually really visually represent how those programming constructs work.
Do you think as well, there's some links here and some dangers, perhaps, sort of the if we're talking about video games in a classroom context, the children are thinking, oh, we're saying, oh, video games are great, you spend as many hours as possible playing the game? Or do you think, we have a duty to remind children about also exercising and getting outside, fresh air?
There's definitely there has to be a balance with what you're doing, but it's the same with everything. If you do sport 100% of the time, that's not very good for you either. Even if you ate the healthiest choices of food, but you're eating that all the time, that also wouldn't be very good for you. So it's all about balance. So as part of Digital Schoolhouse, we work with the wider computer game industry to put out campaigns like Get Smart About Play. There's a website that Yuki, which I'll talk about a bit more about later, Yuki put out, which is called Ask About Games, and that will is a really great website to have a look at, which will talk to you about different games, and you can find out what content's in them, what PEGI rating they are. They'll go through what kind of games are recommended to use with different age groups, and also teach you about different settings that you can apply on the different devices to provide as much safety as possible for your children or your students using those devices. So it's a balance. But with everything, I think everything is a balance.
I mean, I can remember lots and lots of times in my classroom, you know, some of the older children, particularly, the moment you might turn your back or they feel like, oh, teacher's not watching, they would want to go and play, you know, go to friv.com or wherever it was that they could quickly play a game. And, you know, it's tempting to go, no, get off that. No, you should not be, you know, and punish the child. But then you could think, which is eventually the point I got to, you know, children are always going to want to play these games. Haha, maybe I can harness that. I can use that to like, oh, now I see you're playing a platform game. Have you ever thought, no, shut up, leave me alone. I just want to play the games there, you know. So they're definitely a great lure or hook that we can use. So we were talking recently about the Digital Schoolhouse. I think you're going to have to remind me, what do Digital Schoolhouse do for schools? What is it content, curriculum? What is it?
So we do quite a few different things. So initially we were started for providing workshops for primary schools. The idea being that the workshop would be CPD for the teacher, but also something fun for the students. And we've got schoolhouses across the country. And so different schoolhouses run them slightly differently. So some of the schools, the primary school will come to them. So it's like a little trip. I personally, for my schoolhouse, we go to the primary schools just because in my area that seemed to be what the primary schools preferred, but it's slightly different for different places. The idea is the primary teacher doesn't then go off and have CPD or go off and do their marking. They stay in the classroom. It's like a team teaching opportunity. They get to be even be hands-on and actually be a student in the class. Sometimes we do it that way. It just depends on what the teacher feels comfortable doing. So we've got around about 30 different workshops across the full curriculum for computing. So we've got like things like algorithms, looking at hardware, looking at data representation, some more sort of traditional IT type workshops. So we really cover everything. And then as time has gone on, as we've started to have more schoolhouses, we've started to expand what we offer to offer some support and materials that are also useful in the secondary classroom. So all our workshop resources are available for free on our website. And although they're designed for probably year 5, year 6, a lot of the content is actually Key Stage 3 into Key Stage 4. So things like representing graphics. So there's one of our workshops is called Crazy Graphics, and it goes through how pixels work and how binary is used to represent the color of the pixel. And it goes into a little bit of the history of computer games, and we look at how, like, for example, how Mario's developed over time and how as the resolutions increase, he can be more detailed, which all of that is actually relevant for the GCSE course. So all of those resources are there for free if teachers want to use them in their classroom, but they're generally developed for a day, but you could then cut it down and use it for a whole scheme of work for a term quite easily for a Key Stage 3 classroom.
It really does sound like a comprehensive menu. There was something you said back there a little while ago that I can see working really well, where teachers, so if for example, a primary teacher has responsibility for computing curriculum in their school, they probably don't get very many opportunities to go out and watch or even within their own school to see other people's teach computing. Whereas somebody like yourself, for example, where this is largely what you do Monday to Friday, 40 weeks a year or whatever, they can not necessarily want, you know, to go away and do exactly what you do, but to see what you do and think, oh, I could incorporate some of that into my own practice. But if they're not yet ready at that point, they can go and visit the website and have a look at some of the suggested materials and content that's on there.
Yeah, definitely. So the primary school can go and choose a workshop they'd like the look of, that they'd like to be developed in their classroom, or we can sort of work together to come up with something that fits with their theme. So I tend to do that quite a lot. So we did quite a few of our primary schools look at sort of Saxon period. So we did a whole workshop around a Saxon game which is called Nine Men's Morris, and they learned how to play the game, and then they developed their own scratch version of the game, and then the primary school loved it so much it then got incorporated into some of their maths teaching. And that's really the idea behind Digital Schoolhouse, that it isn't like a one-off hit, that the teachers take what they've learned from having that workshop and start to use that in their own curriculum. So they might then have Digital Schoolhouse come in again, but hopefully they'll be looking for a different workshop and then looking at how they could incorporate that into their scheme of work.
That sounds like a brilliant way of doing it, because if you're trying to get children to understand what it was like to live in a certain historic period, you can read them things from books and you can stick something on the big screen for them to watch. But for them to take part in a game from, that has links back to that period of time and say, look, this is the kind of, and why were they playing these? But not just that, as you were saying, there's lots of strategy and problem solving in that particular game, and links to things like algorithms, like could you develop a winning algorithm for this game, or something that's going to give you an advantage over others? Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, so all of our resources have sort of a play-based slant to them. So it might be we do a making faces activity, which is using Play-Doh, and then students take it in turns to give instructions to each other to create something out the Play-Doh, as an introduction to what an algorithm is. So all of our resources have some sort of play-based slant to them, whether that's actually a computer game. So there's one workshop which is based around Mario and looking at creating Mario levels to help to learn binary. Or it might be like the Nine Men's Morris one, where it's an actual board game, or it might be where they're just playing with some Play-Doh or playing with some Lego. But it's always part of what we do.
Is there any sort of competitions that you run as well? Like, I don't know, between schools, because children do just love to play games as well, like team-based or
yeah. So as our cohort of schoolhouses has increased, what we've started to offer, and we've been running this now for 5 years, is an esports tournament, which is available to, first it was just our schoolhouses, but we've opened it out to external candidates as well now. And so the first year we did that, we ran Rocket League, and then we did 2 years of Overwatch, and then the last 2 years we've done Super Smash Bros on the Nintendo Switch. And we run our tournament a little bit differently to other people, so it's very much around the students running the tournament themselves. So it's really encouraged that it's very much student-led, and we have normally, at the moment obviously we can't, and unfortunately this year we've had to cancel our tournament because we are still in 2021 and it's still COVID at the moment, but normally we do face-to-face regional qualifiers for all our schoolhouses and all the external candidates. So you'll go to your local Belong arena, which used to be part of Game, but I believe they've just come out of that. So effectively it's a place you can go and play computer games. You pay for so much and you go and play
fantastic venues they are.
Yeah. It's a really great idea. So we basically take over the Belong arena for a day, and the schools battle it out on the game that we're playing that year. And then once we've done the regional qualifier, we then, this year we plan to have a north and a south semi-final, although obviously it didn't happen, and then a final at the Gfinity Arena in London, which is like a big proper esports arena. And we have a panel come in from various different people in the industry to talk about all sorts of different things. So we did that virtually this year, and that's on our YouTube channel if anyone wants to have a look at what that looked like. And we had a panel of different people from across the industry just talking about different representation and of different types of different people who work in the games industry and their experience.
Could I just go back a little bit? Because I mean, what you're saying sounds absolutely fantastic. And I can imagine some teachers getting really excited about the notion of having, an esports team within their school. And then they go, whoa, hang on, this sounds like an awful lot of work for me to do. And then particularly at the moment, teachers are, facing this crisis, like their workload is just intensified. Yeah. And you're saying now that they should go and organize a club? Come on, Estelle. But you're not saying that, no.
No, I'm not necessarily saying that. I mean, because it's run by the students, generally speaking, it's very, very easy to run. So for me, it was literally, I would sit in my classroom and do some marking and the students would run it themselves.
So have you got structures or guides for the students so they can self-organize, or?
Yes, so we have a full pack that when you sign up to the tournament, you get the pack and it goes through everything, goes through all the different job roles.
Wow.
You don't necessarily have to fill them all. I found myself, the first year I ran it, I didn't have the students doing all the roles because I wanted to understand a bit about how it all worked myself. But as time's gone on, I've more and more had more students running it. So last year I had one of my sixth form students running the whole tournament for me, and I basically just liaised with him and he just did everything, and I just had to be a body in the room to open it up and lock it at the end, which was amazing.
I was talking to Alice Lehman from British Esports, and she said one really good tip is if you are taking part in this, start really small the first year.
Yeah.
Don't try and get 200 children all as part of this, because you'll never do it again. Start off with a small core team and then build it up year after year, and those children in your first cohort can then help mentor and guide. If they were in if they were in 1 year group and they progress up to the next year group the next year, then that works really well. So I've used the word fantastic. I said this all sounds fantastic. In fact, everything you talked about sounds a little bit too good to be true. If you're giving stuff away for free, surely there must be some organization behind all this paying for it all. Is that right?
So we are part of UKI, which is the UK trade body for the games industry. So we're part of their education department. And we also have sponsors. So we are sponsored by PlayStation. Our top sponsor this year is Nintendo UK. PlayStation is another one of our sponsors, Ubisoft, Sega, and Outright Games. And the other one is Warwickshire County Council. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag of different people who sponsor us. And we also have some other sponsors who aren't our main sort of logo sponsors. So we have a local, a smaller company called Skira that make Construct 3. They're also one of our sponsors as well. So Construct 3 is a game making software. So very relevant to the kind of thing that we offer.
There's a bit of me wondering if somebody more cynical than I was watching this thing going, oh, I know why they're doing this. They're just sponsored so they can sell more games. Do you think that's what it's all about? Are PlayStation and Nintendo literally just trying to say, oh, let's get children to play more games in school, and then their parents will spend more money? Is that really what it's all about?
I don't think so. I don't think we generate much game sales, especially when a lot of our resources tend to be based around slightly older games. So it's very much about improving the pipeline into the industry, because obviously with Brexit, there's potentially less people coming into the country to work in the industry. So we want to be really improving the pipeline of our own homegrown people for entering the games industry. So that's a big part of what we do. But also computer game companies, they want to be giving back. They don't want to just be taking our money to play their lovely games. They want to be giving something back to their communities as well. So some of our schoolhouses that are close to one of the studios have actually had the opportunity to go into the studios and do tours and things like that, and they have a bit more of a closer relationship. I'm unfortunately not that close to any of our studios, so I haven't had that opportunity. But they're really keen to know how they can offer support and how they can give back, and that's one of the ways they do it, through sponsorship. So schools that become a schoolhouse, not only do they not have to pay anything, there is also a bursary available. So
money,
yeah. So
and it doesn't have to be spent on video games or consoles.
No, it doesn't have to be spent on video games. So the bursary is there to help support, to free that teacher up a little bit in their timetable so they can go out and do the workshops. So this
all sounds really, really amazing, and I particularly like the this idea that as a teacher of computing, when children mention video games, I'm not having to say, shh, no, we're not doing that. We can actually, we can embrace it, and we can do it with guidance and materials. And because there's a lot of misconceptions out there that games are harmful, and so I think it's really important to see that the industry are helping support the growth of video games as a really exciting context for teaching computing.
Definitely. One of the things I find quite often when I go and deliver a workshop is obviously on all our presentations, we have all the logos of our sponsors. So straight away they see them and they're like, oh, look, station. And it's just really nice to then explain why they're there. And actually the students really like the idea that these sponsors are helping to pay, have someone come into their classroom and deliver a really fun workshop for the day.
I suppose it works the other way around. Rather than this being seen as a way to generate revenue, it's the other way around. It's actually the revenue from those games in reality is being used to fund initiatives like the Digital Schoolhouse and the Yuki education. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And also just to mention something as well, thank you, Estelle. You agreed to be one of our panelists for our Exaflix, where we discussed the High Score docu-series on Netflix, which is probably not really language appropriate for many of the children that we teach, but it's a great source for teachers who have an interest in video games to get excited. So thank you for joining in on that as well. Right. Well, we didn't mention, where can teachers find out more about this?
Yeah, so applications are actually generally open. We have like an official window, but if you are interested, you can contact us at any time and we'll be happy to point you in the right direction. If you're interested in becoming a schoolhouse, that's someone that actually goes out and delivers workshops. So we have a mixture of primary, secondary and sixth form colleges that become schoolhouses. So we're really open to anyone.
So these are like hubs.
They're like hubs.
Support other schools. Okay.
That's right. So there's that side of things. Or if you're a primary school and you're interested in having a digital schoolhouse lead teacher to deliver a workshop, then also get in contact. You can visit our website, which is digitalschoolhouse.org.uk. We also have a YouTube channel, so you can go and have a look at some of the workshops that I've recorded during lockdown. I've done some remote ones, so they're available.
And subscribe so that you get notifications when there's updates to those. Definitely. And of course, there'll be, you know, if teachers watching this use Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, are there accounts there they can follow so it keeps it in their feed? Yeah,
we're on Facebook and we're also on Twitter. We're not on Instagram at the moment, but watch this space, you never know. So yeah, you can also get in contact with us there as well.
Estelle, thank you so much. Digital Schoolhouse all sounds fantastic, and we'll say goodbye there. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.